Everybody, I'm Elise as Another Truth here on YouTube. Thank you so much for stopping by my channel. I do appreciate the time that you have taken to listen to something that I have to say. I hope that you're all doing well and taking exceptional care of yourselves. There is a content warning attached to this video, and that is I may be discussing and in great detail topics like mental illness, disordered eating, personality disorders, catfishing, fake relationships, and to some extent, human trafficking. If these topics are especially triggering to you, please feel free to come back to my channel for another video that is less triggering. Let's begin. So, I know I'm late in the game here with actually responding to Chantal's question and answer parts 1 and 2, though I did have a part 1 that was up. I did remove it, excuse me, at least from my end, because I was concerned that it may be triggering for people with mental health. It might have put too much blame on the mental health community itself. I am entering a phase of my own life where I have decided that I will go into the mental health field. I don't know in what capacity I will explore this. Everything starts with baby feet, baby steps, so to speak. Very small steps to build up my knowledge base, to build up my emotional stamina, my physical stamina, and to some extent my human spirit stamina. Now that I have a grasp of my own mental health challenges, I want to work as an example, and eventually it can go into other facets of mental health justice, like social work or even law, or wherever it takes me. I am a natural at this type of work. I know that I am, but everything needs practice. Everything needs small steps. Everything needs all this that I anticipate will require a lot of education. So that will be on the job education, any certifications, eventually a master's degree, and things like that. But for me, it is going to be a process. And I did not mean to showboat my aspirations and goals, but these are part of my long-term goals. I want to learn to carefully talk about what I see in Chantal's videos. Now, but I'm not an expert. I'm not exactly working in the field just yet, but it will happen soon. I want to look at this a little bit more carefully, perhaps from a social point of view, from a woman who's been through a lot of some of this. Now, I'm not to the degree that she is. Emotional dysregulation does fall on a spectrum. And while I have always ranged at the most severe, there are people who are more severe than that, and there are other people who aren't. Chantal's journey into health is quite young, and that journey may give the person the appearance that they're waffling through, they're waffling about or waffling on, going back and forth on stuff. And I think that Chantal's thinking is rather disordered, or not say disordered, but disorganized, because in these Q&As, I do feel like deep down inside, the thing that she craves the most, and I'm only speaking from experience and observations from a layperson's perspective, I'm not an expert, that she is desperately wanting a family life and a home life. Now, I understand that absence of that home life stability to some extent. I understand how much having a whole family means. I mean, there is a status attached to it, there is stability attached to it, and anybody that wants a family in their reproductive years or beyond that want to raise children. Not everybody does, not everybody has to. I support people who want to be child free. I support people who want to pursue adoption or pursue other means of caring for children or fostering them. And I will talk about my feelings on some of these either later on or on another video. I can understand what Chantal wants, but what Chantal is also telling me in these Q&As that education is not a priority. Now, education, it seems, of any type, because if I remember the question asker, they said that they asked if she plans to do any skill training or anything like that to develop her sense of, well-being, her knowledge base, and things like that. That is a reasonable, respectful question to answer, a question to ask, and should expect an honest answer. And I really did think that that person got the honest answer from Chantal. And Chantal is not interested in these things. I That is what I glean from it. I don't think right now, with what's going on in her mind and her situation, she's in a place where she can do any kind of formal education, whether it's doing a certificate program, doing a 6-week course, or anything like that. Um, I think that she, resists that. Now, I don't know if that's arrogance or it's because she is so psychologically unwell that she can't put it together. And I can understand that. And sometimes people give the appearance that they're arrogant just because they can't think straight. They can't think straight because their emotions are dysregulated. They have a lot of thoughts coming in and out. They're not acting um, because they have underlying issues that need to be treated. They have to learn how to organize those thoughts. They have to organize those fast thinking patterns, or erratic thinking patterns, because they can be quite disruptive. I understand that. That's something that is, you know, uh, a part of having emotional dysregulation. I speak from experience. Now, with that type of thinking and not learning, sometimes learning cues from other people, reading up on culture, reading up on the dangers of things in the world can lead some people to poor decisions, poor decision making. So that poor decision making was very much a part of Chantal's decision to go to Kuwait, a place that is completely different from her own way of living in Canada, to set up house. And I think the only way she could have done that is through this relationship with Sula. And Sula, I believe, or I think, that told her, listen, I'm not going to marry you lest you can revert to Islam, become a Muslima. It's the only way I'll marry you. Doesn't matter if she's Christian. Sometimes Muslim men may overlook that, but he was not about to do that, which is really interesting because you would think that a man with any sort of morals and ethics, kindness and love toward Chantal, he would have really thought about his decision of bringing her across to be with him. It's a long ass flight, okay? It would mean she would have to leave everything she knows about Canada. And believe me, she was desperate to do it because she left a trail of destruction and harm to those she professed to love and those she committed to take care of. And that includes her cats. We all know how that turned out. So we have someone who is emotionally unstable, who has a propensity of violence, propensity to abuse, to neglect, because she certainly does it to herself on a daily basis. That is part of her dysfunction in her mind and her emotional skill set. It's absent of anything self-preserving from what I see, but I'm not a professional. I'm just an observer. So she has gone across the seas to be with this guy who doesn't care about her. He doesn't love her, has no plan for her benefit. In many ways, he might think that he is free because of her reproductive um, stuff going on, her reproductive health. Personally, I think Chantal might have been trafficked to Kuwait. Chantal has this channel. Chantal might have said she made boatloads of money. And Doofus in Kuwait might have said, listen, I have great accommodations. You'll be taken care of as my wife. I don't see the balance of power in this relationship. She is an emotionally and physically vulnerable woman. I say physically vulnerable because of her openly stated health issues. She has said it herself in her Q&A. She has stuff going on that's triggering her mind, and she has stuff in her mind triggering what's going on in her body. It's like this vicious cycle of instability going on with her. And here's this man that said, yeah, I'll make your life better. Chantal did not put together the pieces. She might have thought, oh, I don't have to pay taxes. I don't have to be responsible anymore. I can run away from my problems, run away from what I did to my ex-paramour, what I did to my cats and everything. I don't have to worry about anything. I can shroud myself in ill-fitting abayas and wait this out until I can become legitimized. Think about that word. She wants to feel legitimate and that she counts through this relationship with this man. This man does not care whether Chantal is healthy or not healthy. He does not care about her desires of having a family. He does not care about her health or her emotional well-being. From what I have read, Kuwait right now is ill-equipped to deal with the deep psychological problems that Chantal has, and I can only imagine that it's a lot harder for people who are from there, who live there, who don't have the kind of access to that health care that she has readily accessible in Canada. Now, I don't think she's being prevented access necessarily in Kuwait. I think it's a matter of availability. And if I understand trafficking well, healthcare is not a concern for the trafficker. The emotional well being of someone isn't held by the trafficker, it's not the concern of the trafficker. Now, that term trafficking has a range of possibilities. In Kuwait, human trafficking is quite prevalent. Now, I don't know necessarily the full statistics, but I mean, there are not a lot of Chantals being trafficked in Kuwait. We know who gets trafficked, and we know for what. I thought that if Chantal went there, that they would traffic her for her organs, but I'm not sure how that would be possible given that Chantal is not of good health. But it's quite possible she's being trafficked to do these videos and to make money. Now, she claims she's not making as much money on these videos. I don't know. Probably not. Probably not. So maybe the trafficking idea goes out the window. It's just a matter of two people who essentially catfished each other. But what isn't very explained to me very well, what doesn't make sense to me, is that why would a man who professes to love Chantal and care about her bring her across with no plan to treat her medically, to care for her, to give her a safe and comforting home with all the amenities that she needs to feel somewhat like she's still in Canada, so she can adjust to the culture shock, so she can transition to Islam or become more Islamic slowly. I mean, obviously, it's not prohibited for her to have windows in her flat, accommodation, places where she can actually move around and cook nutritious foods, have access to those things, have good medical care all around. I mean, that's the job of her husband, providing this is even a real marriage, because Islamically, the husband's supposed to take care of that for her. Now, there are a lot of professional Muslim women. We have the mayor of the city next to mine is she's a Muslima. We have Muslimas working in Congress. We have Muslimas as doctors. We have Muslimas who work for Amazon Flex. So yes, Muslimas do work. Chantal, is working as an ass clown on YouTube. And I say that because that has always been the nature of her shows. She is YouTube's court jester. And if she has no interest to have any kind of personal development or self development or anything like that, once her YouTube stuff phases out and she goes more into her faith without any of the personal resources and the ability to work, it's going to really make things more difficult for her. She also talks about her health care in her videos, and her health care, how she doesn't keep track of it. That's obvious. She wants to be healthier, or it seems she talks a good game. I think that that is more of a performative response. I don't think she's necessarily interested in having whole fresh foods in her home. I was very pleased to see that she had a fruit bowl in her flat filled with nutritious pieces of fruit. That's something that she can enjoy in multiples, and it would be okay for her, depending on how her blood sugar reacts to it or whatever. I'm not sure what she's dealing with altogether in her health. And, you know, we don't see her eating a lot of nutritious green leafy vegetables. That's for good fiber. It's to help her. I mean, she could have consulted a nutritionist to help her balance her meals and portion them. She talks about portioning them, but she's ignorant of nutrition because white rice, even well portioned, the amount of rice that she's consuming that we see, it looks like multiple times per week, is will increase her chances of diabetes. She's in an apartment where it's dark all the time. There isn't any windows. I don't know how the air quality is in Kuwait, but I don't see an air purifier. I don't see anything like that that would give her good fresh air, good air for her. She has asthma, all of those allergens, all that nonsense in her home. God forbid mold develops somewhere somehow. I mean, she's in trouble. Okay. I don't think that her place is particularly clean. I don't know if a cleaning um, person comes in to freshen the couch or the bed, how laundry is done. I don't know how often things are washed. I don't know if sanitary measures are considered, but she should be taking exceptional care of her personal washing and things like that because um, stuff can develop if skin isn't appropriately clean and addressed, if you know what I mean. And skin is one of the most vital organs in a person's body. I mean, it keeps everything protected. The abaya might serve as that because she won't have sun damage, which is good. Um, but the stuff that she's putting into her body is not making her skin any healthier. It looks like she has problems with acne or whatever. And I think it has a lot to do with the greasy shit that she eats regularly. Now, understanding all of this, I would assume that a husband claims to love her would say, listen, Chantal, we can't keep doing this because you need your face, we want to keep you in good physical order. Let me teach you how to make a dish I know how to make. Or there are cooking classes around. I will drive you there and pick you up at a certain time. We can go for coffee afterwards, just as a reward for her for completing the class. But, I don't know with Chantal's level of instability, she would do that. But I think if she had structure, she would be okay. We start with baby steps. She could learn cooking tips online if she wanted to. There are plenty of people on YouTube who do healthy Arabic cooking. I follow one Lebanese chef online, and I learned to cook a couple of healthy vegetarian dishes because I am gravitating, believe it or not, to vegetarianism. And my best friend, he's now a vegetarian. He just stopped eating meat. It was a gradual process because we both agreed that um, we have to stop eating this because of the stuff that's going on in the factory farming industry and things like that. And our bodies really don't need that amount of red meat, that amount of chicken. No way. No way. Because of my own eating stuff, but he's also an elderly man, so he doesn't have a lot of intake of that. So, I mean, this is what a partnership does. You discuss things and you say, listen, I'm concerned about this. I love you. Doesn't mean that she has to stop eating. I mean, he doesn't have to leave her because of her size. I mean, I'm happy if her relationship is legitimate and he's supportive. I'm very happy because I think people should be happy. I think people who are solid in their relationships are examples for people like me who have difficulty in relationships. But I don't see this being a type of relationship where there's mutual respect, mutual love, mutual care for each other. I don't think she really cares about anything she puts on Salah, and I don't really care either because I think Salah is the more dangerous one in this situation. But even if we were to take out my opinions about Salah, and let's say that he is, because of his age and level of ignorance of how the world works, maybe he is doing his best to appease her, let's say, and she's manipulating him, emotionally manipulating him. So all he wants to do is just do what she wants to do. And that's it. And maybe that's where the references of his inability to stand up and say anything or do anything or to encounter anything comes up. But I don't necessarily agree with that mindset. I think he is the more dangerous one here. And I think that Chantal is a danger to herself. I mean, what kind of a man sees Chantal, knowing Chantal and her health and her wishes to eat more healthy foods, have a healthier lifestyle, going to the gym, puts trough a trough of food in front of her, in front of a camera? What kind of life is that? I know Chantal, that's what Chantal only wants to do. Chantal only wants to do that. But Chantal also wants a stable life. She wants a family. She said so. So how does she anticipate on getting this family? Well, there are a few things I think about this. Either that there is no chance of her having any kind of family, whether fostering, adopting, or whatever, or even being the first wife and being first mother to any children that Salah brings in, because I don't think Chantal will allow that. At the other thing is that in Kuwait, from what I understand, and I could be amiss, but feel free to correct me, and that comment will educate me and others. That in Kuwait, I believe adoption is prohibited. In general, it's prohibited in Islam, from what I understand. But even if someone does adopt, I think if I understand the legal point of this, that even if they, like, say, two parents from um, who come from, say, Saudi Arabia or something, they decide to adopt or whatever. I don't know about in Saudi Arabia, but I'm just saying, like, because for Chantal, it might be easier to adopt, say, in the UAE than it would be. I mean, she wouldn't be able to adopt children in Kuwait because it's forbidden. But if there is an Islamic based country that does allow it, there are a lot of restrictions, and it's not to the benefit of the child. It's thought to be the benefit of the child, but the child is considered, the adoptive child does not have the same kind of, in my opinion, for my Western opinion, same kind of legacy, say, that as a birth child might have. The way people treat their foster children and adoptive children, even in this country, from unscrupulous, weird parents, the adoptive child or the foster child are second class citizens, oftentimes. the adoptive child or the foster child may not have the same type of access to anything that the birth children had, or even within um, that marriage. I mean, even when people remarry, sometimes a fatherless child, let's say, may not get the same type of treatment as the subsequent children, which I think is what happened essentially to Chantal. And I can understand why she felt have these abandonment issues, and she may not feel like she's good enough. And a lot of her "I'm beautiful, I'm special, I'm more important" attitude is to conceal that. I'm not saying she should be absolved from any of her crimes or her misbehaviors, but I do think there's a reason for all of that. Um, there is a reason for that. There's a lot of trauma around family for her, and she hasn't dealt with it, and it's manifesting itself into monstrous mindsets and behaviors. But anyway, to go back to Chantal, she mentioned she wanted to start a family. Now, she's not going to be able to do that in Kuwait, from what I understand, but she mentioned traveling. I think traveling is great. I think you learn a lot from traveling, um, if it's done correctly. Now, she could go somewhere in the UAE and adopt a child far easier. Now, she's never mentioned adoption. She's never mentioned adoption. She's mentioned starting a family and giving her reproductive health care status that she herself has revealed to the public. I don't think she is able to have a biological child. Now, if her life in Canada were different and she got the help that she required, worked on herself, saved the money she did from YouTube, um, transform the type of content that she was making, and she had responsible levels of boundaries, I could see her fostering children or adopting children. But she is way too unstable, and there are other things going on. Now, I don't make the last decision on it. I don't know how. I'm assuming her finances aren't that great given her situation, but her level of manipulation is such that she may convince someone that she will be a good parent, but she doesn't have the obligation to pass on. I mean, she could pass on her own culture, her own name to a child that she adopts there, but with Salah, it changes the game. And she's a Muslima, so adopted children may not have access to that legacy, that whatever she makes, she would not need to pass it down. She would just have to provide the very basics for the child's survival, because it is thought that the original parents still have ties to the child. Um, and but a lot of children, either the parents aren't able to provide for it, or the children were taken away, even though that the parents are doing their level best to care for their children, and that there's a lot of controversy around adoption. It's one of those things in reproductive justice that um, it's less talked about from the perspective of the person who produced the pregnancy, meaning that who had the pregnancy, who physically carried that reproductive life out to that point. Now, I'm not going to bring up pregnancy termination and adoption alternative, because that's a different conversation. I'm bringing up sometimes the unequal power distribution between adoptive parents and more vulnerable parents, or more vulnerable mother who actually has gone through the reproductive process, who is compelled to believe she can't take care of her child, or just doesn't want to be a mother for whatever reason. That's okay. But there is an unequal power dynamic there. I think Chantal would maybe use that to her advantage to acquire a child. And I think that her child would not have the kind of benefits any biological child might have. And given her nature, given her inability to have stability relationships with anyone, herself or anything. I mean, anything is a relationship. Having a relationship with a YouTube channel means some level of responsibility to steer it in a certain direction that's not going to be harmful to others, and so on. Or having a relationship with oneself, being honest and frank about responsibilities. I will tell you that that child, if she, let's say, if she did want to adopt, which she hasn't mentioned that I know of, even if she did want to adopt a child, even if she did want to um, do that, her child would, she would exploit that child for cash money on YouTube. She would exploit that child. That child would have no kind of life. Okay? I would rather that child stay with their original parents and have that love and care and support. I mean, she, let's say if she did want to adopt. I mean, a lot of Westerners who go and adopt children from other places, yes, maybe, I mean, there are definitely examples of it working out very well. I have not interviewed any people who have been adopted in these circumstances, but a lot of their original identity is erased. Who they are, where they come from, who their biological parents are erased from the upbringing, and they're assimilated into the American or Canadian, whatever, upbringing. But their cultural identity is erased from that, and it's very hard for a child. Um, and I don't know if she's going to have enough respect for that child to do that for her. I mean, if she's listening to this, it would behoove her that she should consider taking care of herself right now before taking care of anybody else at this point. But like I said, I'm just hypothesizing here. If Chantal decided to adopt, because that would be one way of her having this family. And I do not believe Sula would be on board with taking care of anybody else's child. That is just, I think, the kind of person that he is, because he didn't consider Chantal. Now, Chantal's not one of his children, but this is supposed to be his life partner, and he brought her to live in this dungeon, putting troughs of unhealthy, greasy crap in front of her face, not helping her to cook, not helping her anything. And if you listen, I didn't need to see their love documentary and nonsense. Just them together, there's no chemistry. There is absolutely no chemistry between them. None. No discernible trace of it. I think a lot of us have spotted that out. So, I don't know. It's really weird. I mean, I've seen examples in Q&As where spouses talk about, in all different family types, gay families, um, partners who are transgender, respectively, things like that. And you can kind of tell if there's a mutual love and respect. I mean, sometimes I look at my adult children and they're with their partners when we're having like a celebration meal together. And you can tell that they care about each other and they love each other. I mean, that just like makes my heart swell with happiness to see that, like, I know that my kids, my adult children, are in a good place in their relationships. They also know that I am I have their back. I'm their I'll let them know if something is wrong, if I think something is wrong. And I support them having healthy, loving relationships. I see that in other people. I see the chemistry online. Like, I watch a couple of Orthodox Jewish families, and there's one, she's a convert. Her name is Hannah. She's from Jar of Fireflies, and she is a Sephardic Jewish convert, and her husband is from Morocco. And they have such chemistry. And he's a pretty hands-on dad. I mean, he's very religious. He has a lot of religious responsibilities as well, but he's a hard-working guy. That He is a hard-working man. Okay, cares about his family. I mean, you can see it. You can see how they speak to each other, and you don't need a whole lot of PDA to convince people of that. You could tell that they have, um, their marriage is a well functioning marriage, and there looks like there is love and respect for each other. And he does help cook meals, and she works very hard taking care of her family at home. She has young children. She is um, a housewife, a Jewish housewife, and she also educates her children at home. So she works very hard on the domestic forefront. So they both work very hard at what they do. There is that um, power exchange, and nobody looks like they're doing more than the other. They might do more of the other person's thing for a while, and back and forth. Sometimes that happens in relationships, but he takes care of his family, and she takes care of her family. And then there's another family. Oh my goodness, I can't remember the name of her YouTube channel, because I want you to go there and see this. I believe she works in the school system as a nurse. I'm not sure. Her name is Sonia. She's also, I believe, an Orthodox Jewish woman. She talks a lot about her faith, and she also cooks these magnificent, um, delicious, beautiful. I mean, they are beautiful meals. But she mentioned in a question and answer that she had to cut back on a recent one. She had to cut back on some of her videos because it takes so long for her to make them. And she's raising children, and she has a full-time, she also has a full-time job. And her husband's quite busy as well. They did a Q&A, and they look like they have chemistry. They there's some things that are just for show, but you just know. I was like, oh my goodness. I don't know the ins and outs of the marriage. I don't know anything like that, but at least that is how they come across. But if you look at Chantal and Sula together, they don't have that exchange. There's not that loving, even exchange. And he might be more conservative. But if they're doing all of this, it's just weird because there's this certain level of PDA, but there's this certain level of comfortability, and it's not really because of Chantal, it's because they're not a love match. This is a transactional relationship. If it is a relationship, if he hasn't trafficked her, if this is something that she wanted to do and she believes it, and this, she doesn't believe I don't know. I don't know, because trafficking is a very tough subject. I'll talk about that later, because that was one of my core projects in school, was the trafficking trade. Um, so I don't know. I don't know where Chantal is going with this. I hope, she works on herself before she acquires any children. I hope she can get herself in order, make healthier decisions, about our relationships, because believe me, if she does that, once she starts getting well, I mean, definitely she's going to grieve not having the dramatic life. Believe me, I didn't have the kind of dramatic life that she has, but I will tell you, after um, a lot of treatment and work on myself, while I'm glad I don't have to go through a lot of that weird thinking anymore, and that ridiculous amount of instability. I mean, there's still instability in my emotions. I'm still unstable, but I'm more stable, a lot more stable now. Stability comes in all forms. It also means how you're managing in your relationships. It means how you manage in your work life, in your relationships with your pets, your family, your community. That is still a work in progress for me, a work in progress for me. So, she has quite a long way to go. I hope that she does um, find a way. But I'm telling you, and believe me, when you stop being, we realize, like after a while, having that traumatic, the older you get, the less people pay attention. I mean, she's going to be in her 40s if she's not 40 already. She's already middle aged, okay? Um, she can go either way with this emotional instability in middle age is very difficult. Now, they do say that with one particular personality disorder, it might seem to get easier. I agree with that, but I think it really has a lot to do with good therapy and stuff, because then you begin to have a lot of regrets about how you behaved, and you start to feel that everything that you have done is another reason not to do anything good moving forward. And that just isn't the truth. That just isn't the truth. I think that um, in my situation, I mean, there's a lot I have to, what they say, atone for. And nothing that I do that is good is ever going to make up the disappointment I gave my children, the disappointment I gave my friends through my behavior, through my erratic behavior. I mean, there's nothing that's ever really going to make up for that kind of stuff. I don't think that doing well for others means that I'm absolved from that. And it just means that I recognize that and atone for it somehow. Um, I'm not sure how I'm going to do all of that in time, but that is a mission of mine. But also to be kinder to myself. She needs to be a lot kinder to herself. She seems entirely selfish, obviously. Um, she's convinced she's prettier than others. She gets her minions to make threats against people, and because women of higher caliber are calling her out. Now, Chantal can be a high caliber woman. She can be, if she's really um, into that, if she wanted to develop her beauty and poise and stuff, but she doesn't want to do that. That's something you work from internally. There's no reason to be jealous of people having families or having a long-term husband. Believe me, ideally I'd like to have a long-term marriage, but is it really something I want? I've enjoyed my singularity, though I do date, but I really love my own space at the end of the day. I love to be on my own. Maybe that's what Chantal wants to do, but I don't think being buried in a house made out of cinder block and cement and mud is going to help her. Without windows is going to help her um, with anything. I mean, if she had windows, I would say, oh, that place is glorious. I would say that place is glorious. It's an ideal place. It would probably be cooler uh, in the summer. I had such a house when I lived in South Africa. I've lived in wooden houses most of my life in Massachusetts. When I lived in South Africa, I lived in a house like that. But I had windows. The heat was bearable. The heat was bearable. And sometimes at night I would just lay lay on the tiles. I should have had air conditioner, but that's another story. But the heat was bearable, and the ground was cooler. I lived on sea level in South Africa, so she could use her resources that she has to get a better place, um, to get one with windows, with proper air conditioning, with room. She could have a studio, talk about Kuwaiti life. Maybe she could do things like, there are a lot of Islamic charity opportunities that she could involve herself in to develop her mind, to help her walk in the way of Islam more responsibly if that's what she wants to do. But she's not interested in learning. And if she did any of that, it would be performative. So Chantal really has to look at her priorities. She has to, hopefully, she find a way to get better, um, to make decisions. Is this really good for me? Is this really good for my community, the people around me? You know, is can I realistically be a full time Muslima and then accept my responsibilities thereof? These are things that she did not consider before she made her transition to Kuwait, nor making her commitment, because undertaking a religion like that is a Herculean effort. Now, yes, it's easier to revert because it's more like Islam saying, "Welcome back home." I don't agree with it, but that's the way it is. In Judaism, I'm not sure if it's different between the levels, but I know in the Orthodox experience that, say, Hannah had in her conversion, it was a lot more difficult to do that. There was a lot of education she needed to have that she did. And this is something she wanted to do. I believe she started that process before she met her husband. And I think that her husband would not marry her unless she was completely Jewish. But I don't know. I don't know that. But that's okay because, I mean, this is what Hannah wanted anyway. Hannah wasn't doing this to run away from anything. This was a life she wanted for herself, and she wanted to raise her. That's fine. I don't have anything against that. Okay? I'm just saying that, you need to have a level of emotional maturity and respect for what you're doing to make a success out of it. You know, I don't think she has that commitment. Anyway, as I reflect on all of this, there are a lot of things in my life that I too regret and I feel sad about. Like I said, I have to atone for. The great thing about not having 1,000 things run through my head at once is that I can think more clearly. Um, and part of doing these types of videos, I mean, maybe it is a way of making fun of Chantal. It's not my opinion. I'm critiquing a content creator who is public. So I question some of the things that she says in this thing. But some of these things are identifiable, meeting people that aren't good for you, um, making rash decisions about things and not thinking them through with devastating consequences and stuff. I've made such decisions, but I was always one step away from danger. Maybe that was the thrill of it, but I decided I couldn't do that. I just couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't, because I was getting to a point where there were no boundaries. And I said, no, I can't do this. I can't do this. I don't know what happened to Chantal's character development. I've had some kindness shown to me as a child that I could hang on to, that I could use as a building block. And the thing that I always had, even through all my own shit, was hope. Even when I didn't feel like there was, I had hope things would be better. things would be better. And that internal dialogue always, for me, in some way, was my motivating factor. Even when there was one time in my life that it couldn't override anything because I was so overwhelmed with emotions. I got to a very bad point in my life, very bad point, and something I will not recreate in my life. At that point was the start of my new life. It took a while. I still made bad decisions, but I knew from then that was a turning point in my life. And I was like just starting my middle aged years. It's not too late for Chantal if she wants to do it. It's not too late for Chantal at all. She can make better decisions for her life. And it might be just in her latter life she will see the fruit of all of her labor. She will be a better person, hopefully, and atone for what she did for her not children, sorry, cats. Develop better relationships with people. Listen, they have prisoner programs for certain types of prisoners, and they raise pets. They raise uh, what do they call it? Not emotional support pets. The dogs. Is it dogs or is it the cats that they raise? I think some of them do take care of service dogs and teach them, and they also take care of cats as well. And I think having an emotional connection with an animal does a lot. Having my, um, I raised all kinds of animals, but raising my guinea pigs were the hardest because they were so fraught with problems because of overbreeding and everything. It was so devastating when they all left the world. Um, but it's part of their journey. I can't take it. I can't absorb myself in their lives. It's part of their journey. As much as we want them to be around for us, they have their own life and their own system. I mean, people are going to leave us for whatever reason, and it's okay whether they leave us to go in another world or they leave us because they need to do something else with their lives. There's nothing much we can do about that. It's how we take care of ourselves. And that's kind of how I look at it. This is my cat, Zeus. My best friend and I adopted him almost 2 years ago. He sort of dropped in our laps on Mother's Day or the day after Mother's Day in 2021. This would be the year that my life would change for the better. We fought really hard to have a cat. Unfortunately, some agencies are reluctant to adopt out cats to seniors because they're concerned whether or not there will be someone to take care of them, because it is reported that more often than not that seniors who adopt a cat who are then no more, those cats are usually returned to shelters and rescue homes and so on. I don't necessarily agree with that process or anything, but you could say that I was the co-signer, but I am the main adopter of Zeus. However, my best friend and I have worked together to ensure that this little baby you see before you is well fed, loved, taken care of. Now, you could say he served as an emotional support cat in many ways, but that his only responsibility in his life and in this life is just to be a cat. eating, sleeping, pooping, meowing, manipulating me into giving him more treats, more pets and things. And I love to be manipulated by this beautiful creature. He is like a third child to me. He is a very welcomed member of our family. But he's his own being. He just needs the help of humans to look after him, to make certain he is safe, to make certain he is engaged. He has a lot of enrichment. He is a great hunter. He is a great companion, a great child, everything. But I also know that, like all of us, he has a certain time frame in this world. To even think about that brings tears to my eyes. Now, part of dealing with abandonment issues is dealing with the fact that even things beyond our control does not mean that the person or life form or whatever is abandoning us, whether it's a person or a non-human entity. When they leave this world, they're not abandoning us. And I have always associated my fear of death with abandonment, and I'm not certain why. And a lot of times, even when human children, exert independence, it can feel like a level of abandonment. It can feel like that, but that's not what it is. That the feeling of abandonment comes from a very different point from when a person exerts their own life will to decide what happens in their lives. We can't control what other people do. We have to let people and allow people to grow and feel as they own, just like we should expect that of ourselves. I think with my personal growth, even having this cat has taught me, I don't say having this cat, loving Zeus has really taught me a lot about my own fears of illness, of death, of all of these things. A feline, it's not his responsibility, but it does bring up certain feelings and certain emotions and fears that I have. But at the end of the day, Zeus has his own mission in his life. He has his own things he needs to do. He is his own person. He's an adult cat. He's 7 years old, so he's a middle-aged cat. So obviously he has his own schedule. I have to accommodate that for him. I have to respect that. I have to understand that, which I do. Sometimes when he gets sick, I start feeling like he's completely hopeless. But he's not. He's sick. He needs treatment. It's my responsibility to take him to the vet. He goes to the vet regularly. He does get his nails trimmed there. He does get his rabies shot. He does get examined. He is a large cat, but he's not overweight. He's very well built because we play with him a lot, so that he runs around the house. He gets a lot of exercise. He has to be an indoor cat because we live in, the middle of urbanity, and there have been some coyote attacks here, believe it or not. And we're worried about hawks and worried about, the traffic in this area. So he is an indoor cat, but he does have means to explore that are safe, because that's our responsibility with him. So sometimes when someone has emotional dysregulation or they have like borderline personality disorder, I will speak for myself. There were some times when I viewed my children's defiance as hurting me, as flustering me. Now, it's frustrating to go through that, but they were just going through what they needed to go through. They were reacting to the circumstances, let's say. I'm not going to go into it, but I think back to what I said about Chantal and her wanting to start a family. Now, she didn't say if she were going to raise human babies or animal babies. I don't know. I don't know. All I know is that I can imagine that in her situation that a toddler having a tantrum, she would equate to that child hating her, abandoning her because the child doesn't behave in the way that she wants them to behave. The thing about relating to human beings, when we're raising vulnerable, growing people or animals, I mean, we have to respect that they are individual adults. They're not always the extension of ourselves. And I think a lot of that we think too much along that line of, that loving a child or loving an animal or whatever has to be somehow connected to our own life source or our own being. Now, when I was very young, I had these strong maternal instincts. Of course, I wanted to reproduce. I was young. That was me. I was more emotional than I was thinking. Okay, many people make the choice now not to have children for a lot of reasons, and I can understand that given the circumstances. Some people are unable to do that, and they're working through an unfair adoption process. Sometimes it is unfair. Um, People who would be great parents are denied that opportunity for whatever reason. There are a lot of inequities in adoption in many different levels. We can't command a person. We can't have children and look at them like they're mini me's. I don't want my children to be anything like me. I want them to be a step above that, a ladder rung or two above that. That's we want better. It's okay to want better for us because I feel like I want better for myself. That's what I strive to do and be. I try to. I try to. Sometimes I'm not ambitious or I avoid it because of fear, but I take the steps. People aren't here on this world to make us feel secure or at ease about anything. We can't use people that way. We can socialize, relate to people, and appreciate each other for who we are. I had no idea that I would be so in love with Zeus. I knew I would love him. There's something about orange tabbies that melt my heart. There are a lot of reasons for that. This living being trusts me with everything in his life. He trusts me. I earned that trust by constant care, love, enrichment, good food. I had to help him structure a schedule because he was a stray cat. So he was acting on that um, type of schedule. When he kind of understood how we do things and how we interact and things like that, we were able to help him establish a schedule. So I had a plan of, okay, we're going to have to change the type of meals he eats because he was getting sick all the time from it. So we did that. We changed so the way he eats. We changed the way we position his water bowls and fountain. I established a strict cleaning routine that his box gets sifted out um, every day. He gets a box cleaning, I think, like every 10 to 12 days because of the type of litter that we use. Sometimes it's longer, it depends. We try to stretch it out to his comfort. And, um, and making sure that my personal volume is lower because with emotional dysregulation, I could be really loud. So there were a lot of adjustments to make. But I have found that having a routine is very helpful in that level of stability. Knowing what to expect from myself, knowing what to expect every day, the best that we can, is very helpful because I did not have that understanding or knowledge. I didn't know whether I was coming or going in my childhood. So here I am raising this cat. Well, not raising this cat, but caring for this cat, this being. I mean, even after raising children, I understand the importance of routine. But having this animal, I had to, because he doesn't speak my language and I don't speak his language. So we had to teach him how to let us know. Like he would, if he wants meals, he'll rub against us. He'll do that rubby thing against our legs, and it's cute. But now he sort of taps at what he wants as well, because we have things set up where he can access certain food and stuff like that, and he'll tap on it. So we're trying to help him use other type of language skills to let us know what he needs, because I want him to feel like he can get his needs addressed. It takes a lot of time and patience, and we are very proud of him. So while animals can't, like this, can't talk to us, they do talk to us in their own way. They do give us that love, but it's a two-way street. He trusts me and my bestie and our families, and I trust, and I don't say I trust, I'm sorry, he trusts us, and he trusts us that he won't be hurt or anything like that. He trusts me so much. I can massage his beans, clean his little toe beans, because I groom him once a week personally, at least to comb him, because that's all he can tolerate right now. And it's shedding season, so I'm going to try to figure out a way to do it a little bit more. But he's very well groomed. And he gets a freshen up, and I look in his back area to make sure everything's clean back there, because I want to prevent certain things. And then it gives me a chance to see if there are any lumps or anything, just to make sure he's okay. And he trusts me to do that. It just takes 10 minutes to do that whole thing for him, and he's refreshed and he's ready to go. But he trusts me to do that. Complete trust. He knows. And it feels good that I have that. I have that trust. I have his trust. That means a lot in this world. And that's a testament to how I care for him. It's a mutual thing. It might be transactional. He might be manipulating me. He's a cat. He's just a cat, blah, 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 whatever. Yeah, so what? I don't mind him manipulating me. He's not manipulating me. He's just saying, Mom, I'd like a treat. Mom, I need a groom. Mom, please open the window or let me out in the other part of the house so I can run up and down the stairs. Whatever he needs. It's a responsibility, just like with any other relationship. Anyway, that's all I have to say in this video. I hope that you're all doing well, and that you'll continue to do well and take exceptional care of yourselves. Until next time, see you later.